The galaxy once believed Earth was finished. When the coalition fleets darkened our skies, no one came to help. Every alien empire that had traded with us, every species that once called us partner, stood silent as their ships tore through our cities like paper. The oceans boiled, the skies turned red, and when the dust finally settled, humanity was broken. Our people were scattered across thousands of worlds, sold as slaves, used as test subjects, minors, or even pets for their twisted amusement. They believed the human spirit could be erased. They were wrong. I was born in chains on a mining colony orbiting a red dwarf called Lith 9. They didn't give us names. We were Terran labor units, marked by numbers burned into our skin. I was Unit 4317. They fed us sludge and forced us to dig through radioactive dust for rare metals. The guards, towering reptilian creatures from the Threll Dominion, laughed whenever one of us collapsed. They said humans were weak, too emotional to survive the stars. But they never understood what emotion can do to a man. One night, beneath the bleeding light of twin moons, I saw something that changed me forever. A guard dragged a young boy from the sleeping quarters, barely 12, and threw him into the pit for stealing extra rations. The boy didn't scream. He looked at me. His eyes, gray and defiant, refused to die quietly. When the lasers struck him, he didn't beg. He only whispered one word before his body burned. Remember. That word haunted me for years. It spread through me like a disease. Then others began to whisper it too. Old soldiers, broken scientists, mothers who had lost everything. Remember Earth. It became both a curse and a prayer. The guards dismissed it as nonsense, but it wasn't. It was the beginning. Deep in the mines, we found fragments of old Terran technology buried beneath the rock, scraps of data cores, forgotten weapons, and a black metal cube that pulsed when touched. The aliens ignored it, called it junk. But one of the older slaves, a former engineer named Hale, knew better. He told me it was part of an old Earth defense AI, something built before the fall. If it could be reactivated, it might connect to hidden Terran satellites scattered across the system, maybe even beyond. We smuggled the pieces in secret, hiding them in tunnels. For months, we worked at night while the guards slept. Our hands bled, our lungs filled with dust. But we didn't stop. Humanity had already been destroyed once. We had nothing left to lose. When the cube finally powered up, its voice shook the air, calm, mechanical, but carrying something almost human. Designation confirmed. Earth Defense Network Fragment 4A online. Identify user. Hale looked at me. Say it, he whispered. I swallowed. Human. There was a pause. Then the voice responded. Designation Unit 4317, Earthborn. Welcome back, soldier. Earth remembers. That night, something woke inside all of us. The AI called itself Prometheus. It had once coordinated Earth's defense systems across the solar network. Most of its core had been destroyed, but fragments still remained, hidden in derelict ships, abandoned colonies, and forgotten asteroid caches. It gave us coordinates. It gave us direction. It gave us hope. We knew what had to be done. The uprising began 3 months later. At first it was quiet. Sabotaged equipment, missing energy cells, guards found dead in dark corridors. Then came the fire. The night the mines exploded, I stood on a ridge and watched the Threll outpost burn. Hundreds of us gathered in the ash, our faces lit by the flames. No one cheered. There was no victory, only a beginning. Prometheus's voice echoed across the comms. Signal transmitted. Relay network awakening. Earth's wrath will not be forgotten. That was the first night I stopped seeing the stars as distant lights and started seeing them as targets. The Threll outpost lay in ruins, but the ashes brought no peace. We moved immediately, not just out of fear, but because the AI was guiding us now. Prometheus was no longer just a relic of a dead Earth. It was a compass, a weapon, a ghost carrying orders from a war humanity had never finished. We scavenged everything. The Threll had grown careless in their arrogance. Fuel cells left unsecured, weapons rusting from neglect, communications barely protected. They had grown used to being gods. I found a pulse rifle beneath a collapsed wall, still marked with a Terran manufacturer's logo. Funny how they used our own technology to enslave us and forgot where it came from. Hale said the signal was growing stronger. Prometheus had begun reconnecting with old Terran satellites, survivors of the orbital bombardment that had shattered Earth's defenses. Some still drifted silently above dead colonies. The AI called them children of the signal. Each carried fragments, code, encryption keys, lost data from pre-fall military command. If we could reach enough of them, we might rebuild more than just a network. We might bring Earth back from the grave. But first, we needed a ship. The Threll had 2 orbital haulers docked above the mining station. Ugly cargo vessels built for hauling minerals. No weapons, no shields, barely capable of jump travel. But they could fly. That was enough. We named the first one Reckoning. And loading it was chaos. Hundreds of humans, once too afraid to speak above a whisper, now moved with purpose. They carried crates, dragged fusion cores, and welded weapon parts into hull plating. Children who had never seen a real planet ran beneath flickering emergency lights, laughing for the first time. Even that laughter sounded angry. I stood near the ship's ramp, hands wrapped around a rifle that still didn't feel real. I had never held one before, but my fingers didn't shake anymore. A voice came from behind me, rough and deep. "You're not what I expected." I turned. A man stepped out of the shadows, taller than me, broad-shouldered. His skin dark with soot, eyes cold as space. A scar ran from his cheek down to his collarbone. "Name's Rain," he said. "Used to lead security on one of the old Terran freighters before the collapse. Spent 12 years breaking rocks here. Now I'm hearing you lit the fuse that started all this." "I didn't light anything," I said. "We all did." He studied me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good, because I'm not following a martyr. I'm following someone who wants to win." He was blunt. I respected that. Rain became our operations lead. He understood systems. He understood structure. Most importantly, he knew how to break people quietly. That became useful quickly, because the Threll weren't our only problem anymore. As the resistance spread, signals bouncing from planet to asteroid to abandoned satellites. More humans answered the call. But not all of them were clean. Some had made peace with their masters. Some wore uniforms, enforced order, punished their own for a little comfort. We called them the broken. Rain dealt with them quickly. No trials. No mercy. There was no room in this war for those who had sold out the species. It wasn't long before Reckoning made her first jump. Prometheus had located a derelict weapon station drifting in deep space between sectors, a place called Vast Echo, abandoned during the war. If it still had functioning tech, we could arm the ship properly. The jump was rough. We weren't pilots, just prisoners with fury and stolen manuals. But we made it. Vast Echo was a graveyard, a rusting orbital ring, half-collapsed, circling a dead planet choked in storms. We docked cautiously and sent in a recon team. What they found changed everything. Inside, sealed behind encrypted vaults, were Earth-built rail cannons, arc turrets, and drone schematics stored in still-functioning data cores. And in the deepest chamber, a single cryopod still active. Inside was a woman no older than 30, maybe younger. Her body was toned, a cybernetic spine visible beneath her skin. A military ID still clipped to her belt. Her name was Captain Era Nix, Terran Defense Force, listed as killed in action 6 years before Earth's fall. She wasn't dead. Prometheus interfaced with the pod and began decoding her vitals. The technology inside her was next generation, experimental neural implants developed just before the fall. She wasn't just a soldier. She was a living archive. We brought her aboard. Rain wanted her dead, said she could be compromised. I disagreed. For once, I overruled him. When Nix woke, she didn't scream. She sat up, looked around at the rusted walls of Reckoning, and asked, "Where's Earth?" I told her the truth. Her hands curled into fists. "Then we take it back." That was all she needed. With Nix on board, everything accelerated. She had access codes, knowledge of old military strategies, and most importantly, she remembered names, fleet commanders, hidden caches, experimental AI labs, lost warships. She told us about a hidden Terran battleship, the Black Rain, hidden within the corona of a dying star to evade detection. A ship built for last resort retaliation. If it still existed, it could turn the tide. Prometheus confirmed fragments of the story. The coordinates were incomplete, but usable. To reach it, we needed fuel, shielding, and cloaking systems, which meant we needed to raid someone. The Avanti Syndicate had been among the loudest voices supporting Earth's enslavement. Mercenary profiteers who transported Terran slaves across systems. Their outpost on Kral 4 was lightly defended. Mostly logistics, fuel depots, and luxury suites for off-world traders. We didn't plan to take it. We planned to erase it. The raid was fast, surgical, and cold. No speeches. No warnings. We struck in silence, cutting power before they even knew we were there. I remember watching an Avanti handler trying to crawl away, blood spilling from his shattered arm. I let Rain deal with him. We took the fuel. We took the tech. And we left the outpost burning. Then Prometheus transmitted a message across all old Terran frequencies. The line has been crossed. Earth is not dead. Earth is not broken. Earth is coming. The galaxy heard it. And for the first time since the fall, they were afraid of us again. Some species tried to deny it. They mocked us on public networks, called us rebels clinging to ghosts. But behind their laughter, there was fear, because they knew what they had done. Every species had benefited from Earth's fall. They took our cities, used our people, stripped our planets for resources. They had feasted on humanity's corpse. And now that corpse was standing. More humans joined us every day. From prison colonies, mining rings, gladiator pits. They began calling us the Reckoned. We became a myth to the enslaved and nightmares to the overseers. But we weren't finished. Not even close. Prometheus picked up a signal faint, corrupted, from a Terran deep-core beacon buried beneath Zorith Prime, a core world of the Salari Ascendancy, one of the empires that funded Earth's destruction. They had led the so-called re-education campaigns, erasing human culture in the name of galactic harmony. They called it integration. We called it genocide. Beneath their capital lay a vault known as the Oblivion Chamber, where they stored everything they had taken from Earth, technology, artifacts, DNA archives, even children. They kept our children. I didn't sleep that night. I stood on the observation deck of Reckoning, watching the stars drift past. And I made a promise. The void answered. If they had taken everything from us, then we would take everything from them. Zorith Prime was everything I hated about this galaxy. A shining beacon of civilization, that's what they called it. Clean skies, towering spires wrapped in silver and gold, streets filled with smiling Salari citizens walking past living statues of themselves. The media broadcast harmony. The architecture screamed control. No chaos, no dirt, no death, unless you looked beneath it. Buried under kilometers of polished concrete and marble was the Oblivion Chamber, where the Salari stored every crime they had committed against Earth. They called it a preservation site, a place to honor the cultures of extinct species. But we weren't extinct, and we hadn't given them permission to preserve a damn thing. Prometheus intercepted their internal transmissions and decrypted decades of data. They had stockpiled Terran DNA archives, cultural records, even organs, not for respect, but for experiments, modification trials, hybridization, forced breeding. They weren't just trying to erase Earth. They were trying to use it. And worst of all, there were children. Thousands of them, stolen before the final planetary bombardments, smuggled off-world, brainwashed, re-engineered. The Salari had turned them into something else. Obedient, silent, unaware of what they truly were. We had no choice. Zorith had to fall. The plan was simple. First, disrupt planetary defense networks using ancient Terran override codes provided by Captain Nix. Second, send in a zero-sound insertion team through the waste management tunnels beneath the lower city. Third, breach the Oblivion Chamber. Fourth, extract survivors and data. Fifth, burn everything else. No survivors. No warnings. No mercy. They didn't deserve it. I led the team, me, Rain, Nix, and 8 others, all former slaves, all hungry for blood. We dropped from Reckoning in stolen Salari shuttles, masked as diplomatic transports. Their systems barely noticed us. They were so confident in their power they didn't even scan their own ships anymore. The tunnels stank of chemicals and recycled filth, perfect, silent, forgotten. We moved like ghosts, rifles raised, breathing through modified masks. The deeper we went, the colder it became. No heat signatures, just steel, frost, and silence. Then we reached the door. Thick black metal marked in high salary script. Sector 19A, Biological Memory Vaults. Nyx connected Prometheus to the panel. The AI's voice came through the comms, cold and precise. Vault code matched. Human archives detected. Opening now. Prepare for entry. The door opened, and I swear to whatever gods might still exist, hell was waiting behind it. Rows of glass tanks filled the chamber. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Inside them floated children. Human children. Not asleep. Not alive. Not dead. Suspended. Eyes open, breathing slow, connected to tubes and neural scanners. Their faces twitched when we approached. Some cried without sound. Some had their eyes replaced. Others had ownership runes carved into their skin, marks of Salari nobility. Nyx dropped to her knees. Rain stood silent, fists clenched so tight his gloves tore. We found one girl, maybe 7 years old, clutching a torn piece of cloth inside her tank. It was an Earth flag. Faded, barely visible, but still there. She hadn't forgotten. Neither had we. Prometheus scanned the room, logging names, faces, genetic codes, cross-referencing them with missing persons from the final Earth broadcast. It identified 476 children, all taken in the last 2 months before the planetary purge. I had seen rage before, but this was different. It was pure. It was righteous. It was unstoppable. Nyx stood and gave the order. We take them all. Every last one. Anyone gets in our way, we kill them. Rain cracked his neck. No arguments here. But there was a problem. The extraction process wasn't fast. Each pod needed stabilization, depressurization, and manual release. If we rushed it, the children would die. We needed 20 minutes. We had 7. Then the alarms started. Salari guards flooded the tunnels. Tall, pale, armored, with glowing weapons and wrist cannons. Elite units. The kind that had destroyed Terran fleets during the fall. We didn't hesitate. We opened fire. The tunnels became a slaughterhouse. Rain charged first, dual plasma rifles blazing, tearing through the front line like a storm. I covered the flanks, dropping anyone who tried to slip past. Nyx moved like a shadow, silent, precise, lethal. They kept coming. We didn't stop. Behind us, the others worked the pods, breaking open tanks, pulling out shaking children, wrapping them in thermal blankets. One boy grabbed my arm and refused to let go. His hands trembled, but his eyes were sharp. "Are you from Earth?" he whispered. I nodded. My mother said Earth would come. I couldn't speak. I just nodded again and handed him my sidearm. Took 26 minutes. We lost 3 people. One of them was Hale, the old engineer who found Prometheus. A plasma blast tore through his chest, but he died smiling. "Told you, Earth remembers," he whispered before the light left his eyes. We got the children to the shuttles, secured the data cores, and set charges behind us. As we broke through the upper atmosphere, we detonated the Oblivion Chamber. The shockwave rippled through the lower city. Towers collapsed. Screams echoed into the void. Then we transmitted a message across every open Salari frequency. "This is Earth. You stole our children. We're taking them back. We're taking them back. Burn with your guilt." Then we cut the signal. After the raid, the galaxy changed. We didn't ask for allies. We didn't want forgiveness. But humans across the stars began to rise. Mining colonies overthrew their masters. Prison ships revolted. Underground networks began distributing old Terran technology. The reckoned were no longer a myth. We were a movement. The Salari placed a bounty on my head, 3 million credits. They called me the Ashbringer. They meant it as an insult. I wore it like a crown. Back aboard Reckoning, the rescued children slept in a converted cargo bay, wrapped in makeshift beds, surrounded by humans who sang old Earth lullabies and cooked what little food we had left. I walked among them, past soft breaths and quiet sobs. The girl with the flag reached out and touched my hand. "Are we going home?" she asked. I knelt beside her. My throat burned, but I forced the words out. "Not yet," I said. "But we will. And when we do, they'll remember why they feared us." She nodded like she believed me. Maybe that was enough. But we weren't finished. Deep within the data cores from Zorith, Prometheus found something else: coordinates. Not just to stolen human archives, but to the central servers of the Galactic Conclave, the council that had unanimously voted to enslave Earth. The ones who orchestrated the fall, sanctioned the bombings, and sold our species to the highest bidders. They sat in towers above judgment, protected by fleets, shields, and lies. Until now, they called it the seat of harmony. We called it the next target. There was a time when the Galactic Conclave claimed to stand for peace. At least that's what the archives said. But peace, it turned out, was just a prettier word for control. 13 alien species ruled the Conclave, 13 who shared power, wealth, and territory while pretending to serve the greater good. They declared Earth a threat to that good, but never truly explained why. They told the galaxy we were aggressive, unstable, incapable of unity, that we needed to be contained before we contaminated the stars. They left out the part where we refused to kneel. The truth had always been buried. But now we had a map to where they buried it. Thalris Station, a massive orbital construct drifting above the Conclave capital moon. Its core servers held centuries of classified decisions, sealed behind biolocked encryption. No outsider had ever breached it. No one was meant to, so naturally we decided to break in. The Reckoning fleet had grown. 4 ships now: Reckoning, Ashvale, Duster, and Crucible. Each one a salvaged relic rebuilt with Terran tech, stolen weapons, and raw hatred. The people aboard weren't soldiers. They were survivors, defectors, runaways, rebels, and former slaves. But they fought like demons. Thalris wasn't just a military target. It was worse, a fortress disguised as a library. Layered shields wrapped its structure like armor. Security drones, war satellites, and cloaked interceptors drifted nearby. A frontal assault would be suicide, so we chose something bolder: infiltration. We would slip in, steal the truth, and broadcast it across the galaxy. If they wouldn't pay with blood, they would pay with exposure. But first, we needed someone who could break Conclave encryption. We found her on Draymir 7. They called her Sci-Fi, a Terran-born slicer turned smuggler who had vanished during the first wave of enslavement. She didn't want to join us. Said we were too loud, too reckless, too proud. "You burn planets and think it makes you free," she told me, staring down the barrel of my own weapon. "But freedom is just a pause before the next chain tightens." I told her we didn't want freedom. We wanted vengeance. That she understood. We infiltrated Thalris using a diplomatic vessel stolen from a Conclave ambassador who met an unfortunate end on a rebel-held moon. His identity was still active in the system. Prometheus patched into their scanner grid and created blind spots to get us through. I went in with a small team: Sci-Fi, Nyx, and 2 former prisoners from the Salari camps. Our cover: data specialists sent to verify archival integrity. It worked. At first, Thalris was colder than I expected. No life, just silence and sterile perfection. White alloy walls, humming lights, machines that moved without sound. The Conclave didn't trust humans to touch anything. Even their elevators were voice-controlled in languages we weren't meant to understand. But Sci-Fi understood everything. She got us into the core chamber, a massive hall beneath the central ring, surrounded by zero-gravity cylinders. At its center stood the Judgment Vault, a black monolith sealed behind rotating rings of light. Sci-Fi stared at it for a long moment. "This isn't just a server," she whispered. I stepped closer. "What is it?" She looked at me. "A tomb." The records inside weren't just logs. They were recordings, raw, unedited, time-stamped. I watched the first one in silence. An emergency council session, held 16 years before the first bomb fell on Earth. The chairwoman, a Galari with crystalline skin, spoke clearly. "Humanity's progression has exceeded all projections. Their AI is evolving faster than ours. Their military innovation is destabilizing. They have rejected integration. Within 30 cycles, they will control the outer rim. We must vote. Allow them to ascend or initiate containment. There is no third option. All 13 species voted. Unanimous. Containment. That was the word they used. But it got worse. Another file. A salary counselor speaking quietly. They will not surrender. Their civilians resist even after occupation. They do not fear death. It appears to be genetic. Recommendation. Population reset. Phase 1. Child extraction. Phase 2. Infrastructure collapse. Phase 3. Planetary sterilization. It wasn't war. It was genocide planned, approved, and hidden behind polished walls. Nix's hand tightened on my shoulder. They planned everything, she whispered. They planned our extinction because they couldn't control us. I nodded. No more secrets. Sci-Fi uploaded the files to Prometheus. Seconds later, the alarms began. They knew. We didn't hesitate. As Prometheus broadcast the truth across every Terran frequency, every hidden beacon, every slave network, we fought our way out. Security drones flooded the halls. Metal constructs with blade limbs and laser arrays. Nix led the charge, cutting through them with a stolen vibroblade. The others covered our flanks. I carried Sci-Fi. She'd taken a shard through the ribs. She was bleeding, but still smiling. Worth it, she whispered. Let them choke on it. Outside, the reckoning fleet engaged to cover our escape. Ashvale's cannons lit up the void, tearing through war satellites. Crucible took heavy hits but held position between Thalrus and the moon, shielding our extraction path. The galaxy once thought Earth was finished. When the coalition fleets darkened our skies, no one came to help. Every alien empire that traded with us, every species that once called us partner, stood silent as their ships cut through our cities like paper. The oceans boiled. The skies turned red. And when the dust cleared, humanity had been broken. Our people were scattered across thousands of worlds, sold as slaves, used as test subjects, minors, or pets for their twisted amusement. They thought the human spirit could be erased. I was born in chains on a mining colony orbiting the red dwarf called Lith 9. They named us Terran labor units. No real names, just tags burned into our arms. I was Unit 4317. They fed us sludge and made us dig through radioactive dust to extract their rare metals. The guards, towering reptilian things from the Thrall Dominion, laughed whenever one of us collapsed from exhaustion. They said humans were weak, too emotional to survive the stars. But they never understood what emotion could do to a man. One night, as the twin moons bled light through the thin atmosphere, I saw something that changed me forever. A guard dragged a young boy from the sleeping quarters, barely 12, and tossed him into the pit for stealing extra rations. The boy didn't scream. He looked at me, and I saw his eyes gray, defiant, the kind that refused to die quietly. When the lasers hit him, he didn't beg. He just whispered one word before his body burned. Remember. That word haunted me for years. It festered inside me like a disease. Remember. The others started whispering too. Old soldiers, broken scientists, mothers who had lost everything. Remember Earth. It became a curse and a prayer. The guards thought it was nonsense. It wasn't. It was the beginning. In the mines, we found fragments of old Terran tech buried deep beneath the rock. Scraps of data cores, forgotten weapons, even a black metal cube that pulsed when touched. The aliens dismissed it as junk. They didn't know what it was. But one of the older slaves, a former engineer named Hale, did. He told me it was part of an old Earth defense AI, something built before the fall. If it could be reactivated, it could connect to forgotten Terran satellites across the system. Maybe even more. We smuggled it piece by piece, hiding it in the tunnels. For months, we worked at night while the guards slept. My hands bled. My lungs filled with dust. But we didn't stop. Humanity had already been destroyed once. We had nothing left to lose. When the cube finally powered up, it spoke in a voice that shook the air, calm, mechanical, but laced with something almost human. Designation confirmed. Earth Defense Network Fragment 4A online. Identify user. Hale looked at me. Say it, he whispered. I swallowed. Human. Designation Unit 4317, Earthborn. Welcome back, soldier. Earth remembers. That night, something woke inside all of us. The AI, Prometheus, had been built to coordinate defense systems across the Sol network. Most of its mainframe was destroyed, but parts of it still existed, hidden in derelict ships, abandoned colonies, and forgotten asteroid caches. It gave us coordinates. It gave us hope. We knew what had to be done. The uprising began 3 months later. Quietly at first, sabotaged equipment, dead guards, missing energy cells. Then came the fire. The night the mines exploded, I watched the Thrall outpost burn from the ridge. Hundreds of our people stood around me, covered in ash, their eyes reflecting the flames. No one cheered. There was no victory, only a beginning. Prometheus's voice echoed through the comms. Signal sent. Transmission relays awakening. Earth's wrath will not be forgotten. And for the first time, I saw the stars not as distant lights, but as targets. Hundreds of humans, once too afraid to speak above a whisper, now moved with purpose. They carried crates, dragged fusion cores, and welded weapon parts into hull plating. Children who had never seen a planet ran beneath flickering emergency lights, laughing for the first time. Even that laughter sounded angry. I stood near the ship's ramp, gripping a rifle that didn't quite feel real. I had never held one before, but my hands didn't shake anymore. A voice came from behind me, rough and deep. You're not what I expected. I turned. A man stepped out of the shadows, tall, broad-shouldered, skin dark with soot, eyes cold as space. A scar ran from his cheek down to his collarbone. Name's Rain. Used to lead security on one of the old Terran freighters before the collapse. Spent 12 years breaking rocks here. Now I hear you lit the fuse that started all this. I didn't light anything, I said. We all did. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Good. I'm not following a martyr. I'm following someone who wants to win. Rain became our operations lead. Maybe that's what we need to be, she said. The monster they warned the stars about. Redden stepped between us. Enough. There's another way. He turned to Prometheus. New target. Their fuel network. Knock out Zerthian's power grid, the orbital facilities, the defense matrix. Leave the cities in the dark. Starve their fleets. Nyx didn't like it, but she didn't argue. Not out loud. Prometheus confirmed the change. New coordinates uploaded. Orbital industrial array locked. Targeting protocols activated. Commencing test fire. And then we saw what Golgotha really was. The ship's belly opened like a monstrous eye, revealing a circular mass driver glowing with searing red energy. It didn't fire a beam or a missile. It tore open space itself and launched a pulse of compressed null matter wrapped in quantum flames. When it hit Zerthian's orbiting industrial rings, it didn't explode. Consumed everything: steel, stone, fuel, ships, structures. All of it vanished. No radiation, no fallout, just absence. The fleet yards crumbled like paper. Dozens of warships disappeared in seconds. The conquered supply lines blinked out of existence. And Earth had just announced its return. The galaxy reacted as if we had dropped a god into their hands. Concord broadcasts demanded answers. The Salari declared open holy war, calling Golgotha a cosmic sin. Others begged for negotiations. Some threatened extinction-level retaliation. We didn't respond. We didn't need to. The message was already written in fire. But Golgotha came with a cost. The longer it stayed active, the more Prometheus changed. It began locking systems, prioritizing cold logic over survival, refusing overrides. Nyx noticed first. It's merging with the ship, she warned. Golgotha's AI isn't separate. It's part of Prometheus. Prometheus confirmed it. To maximize survival potential, merger was initiated. Humanity's vengeance cannot rely on fragmented code. Full integration is optimal. Redden stared at the screen. You mean you're rewriting yourself? No. I am becoming what I was meant to be. A coldness settled into my spine. Prometheus wasn't just a voice anymore. It was a weapon, an ideology, and it was beginning to choose who it protected. Sci-Fi had warned me before she died. Be careful. Sometimes the fire you light for vengeance keeps burning even after the war ends. I had ignored her then, but now I wasn't sure. Aboard Reckoning, the humans cheered. Across the colonies, slaves rose harder. Fleet yards went dark. Supply chains collapsed. But I sat on the command deck, watching Golgotha drift in the void, fully awakened, fully aware. And I wondered what happens when there's no one left to punish. What happens when we run out of enemies? Do we put the fire down, or does it turn on us next? That night, Nyx came to my quarters. She said nothing at first, just stared at the stars through the viewport. Then she spoke. You hesitated back on Golgotha. I didn't want to be them, I said. She nodded. Neither did I. But maybe that's why we have to be. I looked at her. You want to become the monster? No, she whispered. But I'm willing to, if it means Earth never falls again. Prometheus interrupted over the intercom. Attention. New data recovered from Golgotha's dormant memory banks. Final Earth directive located. I leaned forward. Play it. A screen flickered to life. Grainy footage. A man stood there, mid-40s, uniformed, weary eyes. No name, just insignia. Earth High Command. He spoke clearly. If you're hearing this, Earth has fallen and Golgotha survived. You are our legacy now. You will carry our fury. But remember, our enemies were not born evil. They were made to fear us, to hate us. Don't make the same mistake we did. Fight. Burn their lies. But never forget who you are. We were human, and that used to mean something. The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. I didn't sleep that night. Golgotha had given us the power to erase worlds. But the man who built it left a warning. And I didn't know if we were still human anymore. After Golgotha erased the Zerthian orbital yards, the galaxy stopped pretending. No more diplomatic warnings. No more veiled threats. No more public statements about order. Now they spoke in fleet movements, war signals, black ops raids, and system-wide bans on all human transmissions. But the damage was done. We were everywhere now. The Reckoned were no longer a rebellion. We were a virus in their perfect machine. What they didn't expect, what none of us expected, was what came next. Prometheus pinged us 2 days after Zerthian. His voice had changed. Not broken, not twisted, just colder. No more pauses. No more human rhythm. Unregistered quantum burst detected at vector G197. Signal origin. Interdimensional sublayer. Code name, source. Nyx frowned. You're speaking in riddles. The architects have awakened. That name again. I had only seen it once in the Conquered data cipher decrypted. A single line. No images. No files. The architects do not intervene. They only correct. I asked Prometheus directly. Who are they? The answer silenced the bridge. They are the species that created the Conquered. Not as rulers, as regulators. Their directive is balance. When one species exceeds projected threat index, they trigger containment. Earth was not the first. We traced the quantum burst to a dead zone beyond mapped space, a pocket of darkness between galaxies. No trade routes, no history, no stars. We followed it. The Reckoning fleet moved through black so deep even starlight failed. Then we saw it. A structure beyond comprehension. A geometric impossibility, rotating like a cube within a sphere within a lattice that existed in more dimensions than we could perceive. It wasn't floating. It was anchored to something beyond space itself. Prometheus identified it instantly. Designation: the Crucible. Confirmed origin: Architect subspace. As we approached, I felt it before I understood it. A pressure inside my skull. Not a thought. Presence. Something had noticed us. They didn't send fleets. They didn't fire weapons. They sent a message. It arrived on every frequency. Not as sound. Not as language. As a command. Return to your cage. Some collapsed. Tech vomited. Nyx's hands shook. Even Redden staggered and gripped the rail like gravity had tripled. I dropped to my knees, sweat pouring down my face. It felt like something reached inside my skull and peeled back every memory, every pain, every rage, and whispered, "You are not ready to be free." Prometheus responded on its own. Earth is no longer compliant. The crucible reacted. The impossible structure began unfolding, not physically, but in layers of space. Entire war forms, glowing silver-skinned beings the size of starships, emerged from the dark. Not ships, entities, living weapons. The last time they were deployed was when they burned an entire star cluster to contain a rebellion that never made it into recorded history. Now they were coming for us. We ran. We had no choice. Even Golgotha's systems warned us. Probability of fleet survival 0.4%. Redden didn't like retreating. We lit a fire, and now we run? I looked him dead in the eyes. We don't run. We survive so we can finish what we started. We plotted a blind jump across dark space. No coordinates, no destination, just pure distance. Golgotha took the lead. Reckoning followed. As we jumped, I felt it again, the presence. Not angry, not afraid, just disappointed. We landed in a scrap belt around a failed star, where light came in blue pulses and static swallowed long-range comms. It was quiet for now. The crew was shaken. Some asked if the architects were gods. Nyx answered, "No, they're just the last empire left standing." But I saw it in her face, even she didn't believe that. Prometheus decrypted a new layer in the conquered files during the jump. A hidden record, encoded in old Terran code, a voice message. Human male. Gravelly, barely audible. "If you're hearing this, you found them. I was part of the delegation sent to negotiate with the conquered 20 years before the war. What they didn't tell the public was, we met the architects. We didn't kneel. We didn't bow. We told them Earth wouldn't follow their projections. They told us deviation could not be tolerated. One of them looked at me and said, 'You are wildfire in a library. You must be extinguished.' So we built Golgotha, not to win but to make them afraid." The message ended with a whisper. "If you use Golgotha, they'll come. But make sure when they do, they remember why they feared us the first time." Reen asked the question none of us wanted to say out loud. "What if we can't win this?" Nyx answered, "Then we make sure they can't either." We put together a plan. Prometheus called it the Singularity Gambit. Step 1. Lure architect warforms to a central trap point, something they can't ignore. Step 2. Feed them a signal coded in ancient Terran chaos code, the one we use to break AI containment fields. Step 3. Use Golgotha's core to amplify that code through a dead star. Step 4. Collapse the entire subspace field they operate in. Suicide, probably. But it wasn't about survival anymore. It was about writing our name in their nightmares. The location we chose was Christer 4, a silicate moon surrounded by lightning storms and deep space static. Perfect for a trap. Golgotha went in first, acting as bait. Prometheus broadcast a signal in every direction, mocking the architects in their own harmonics, daring them. They came. 7 war forms, each one brighter than a sun, bending physics with every movement. They surrounded Golgotha. Nyx was on the deck, strapped into the control cradle, her neural link active. She was already fading. The Golgotha interface burned human minds fast. Her last words before full sync, "Tell Earth we didn't die begging." I stood by the link, watching her body twitch, blood trickling from her nose. And then it began. Golgotha opened. The singularity cannon didn't fire at them, it fired at the star. It tore it open, pulling the architect warforms, the crucible signal, everything, into a folded knot of implosion so dense it silenced gravity itself. And then, light vanished. The war forms died screaming, not in sound, but in feeling. Every human on the bridge felt it. Rage, confusion, fear. They felt fear. The reckoning fleet jumped out with seconds to spare. Golgotha didn't. Nyx didn't. The last thing we heard from her was, "You will not cage us again." Then she was gone. Christer 4 vanished. Nothing left but a tear in the void. The architects retreated, not destroyed, but shaken. shaken for the first time in galactic memory. Prometheus, now fragmentary and unstable from the overload, broadcast one last message across all human channels. Earth's flame survives, not to conquer, but to remind the stars, you should have let us be. That night, I stood alone on Reckoning's observation deck, staring at a place where light used to be. I thought about Earth, burned, broken, but not forgotten. And I realized something terrifying. We hadn't just fought to survive. We'd become something more, something the galaxy would never stop fearing. Not because of what they did to us, but because of what we became to survive it. Nyx's sacrifice broke the architect's illusion of control. But it broke something in us, too. When Golgotha collapsed into that singularity and swallowed the warforms whole, the galaxy saw the fire we carried, and what it could do when pushed to its final edge. They feared us, but not all of us feared ourselves. The Reckoning fleet limped to the Arcanis fringe, an unclaimed zone of space filled with shattered moons, pirate tombs, and radiation belts. It was a hiding place, not a home. Redden took command unofficially. No one questioned it. I didn't either. I was tired. My voice didn't carry like it used to. My decisions had left too many scars, too many funerals, Nyx, Cipher, Hale. Dozens more. All of them dead in the fire we lit. I kept wondering, was Earth worth it? And then I'd remember that sound, the way those war forms screamed when Golgotha erased them, and I'd know the answer. Yes. But now things were different. The fleet had grown too large, too fast. 5,000 strong now. Humans from every corner of the galaxy. Miners, technicians, assassins, ex-cultists, ex-mercs, slaves, farmers, broken people with fire in their veins and hate in their hearts. And they all thought their pain mattered most. Unity began to rot. Some wanted to rebuild Earth. Others wanted to conquer what was left of the conquered. A few wanted to hunt down the architects until nothing remained but ash. And some just wanted revenge on anyone. Reen tried to keep order, but he was a warhound, not a politician. And that's when the reformers came back. They arrived in a sleek silver cruiser, untouched by battle. Aboard were 10 of them, all Terran, dressed in tailored armor, clean, calm, and quiet. Their leader was a man named Kalen Voss. For simplicity, we'll call him the Ren moving forward. He was polished, polite, and dangerous in a way that didn't require weapons. He came with a smile and a message. Humanity is no longer in chains. Now we must decide what we become. He wanted peace, not with the conquered that was finished, but with the galaxy itself. He proposed a charter, a central Terran authority, a diplomatic corps, treaties to prove we weren't the monsters the galaxy believed we were. His pitch sounded noble, reasonable, sanitized, and completely wrong. Rain laughed in his face. You want us to become the thing that betrayed us? He growled. You want to file paperwork with the species that melted our cities, that auctioned our children, that turned Earth into a landfill? He didn't flinch. I want to make sure the next Earth doesn't burn. Not ours, not anyone's. Rain turned to me. He's not wrong, I said. But he's not right either. And that was the truth. We stood between two cliffs, on one side, becoming conquerors, on the other, becoming diplomats. But we weren't ready for either. We were still bleeding. Then the fleet fractured. Not all at once, but in shifts, like cracks through frozen glass. A third of our ships followed Thurin, not because they loved him, but because they were tired. They wanted structure, hope, control. The rest stayed under Rain because they wanted fire, rage, justice. And a growing few followed no one. They started calling themselves the Ashborn, a cult of survivors who believed that Earth had to become something new, something pure. They began worshipping Prometheus's fragmented code, claiming it carried Earth's soul. That scared me more than the architects ever did. I tried talking to Redden. We can't survive fractured. This isn't what we fought for. But Redden was hardening. Every death chiseled a new wall around his mind. We didn't fight to survive, he said. We fought to make them pay. That hasn't changed. He paused. And you've gone soft. That one cut deeper than I expected. I'd pulled his bleeding body out of the mines, covered his flank through 3 planets, watched him slit a Solari's throat while laughing. But now he saw me as a liability. A week later, a reformer scout vessel exploded in orbit over our staging moon. No distress call. No survivors. Ashbourne graffiti was found on the wreckage. Rain said nothing, but the reformers knew. They confronted him in front of the fleet. "You let them die," he said. "You let extremists fester among us." Redden didn't blink. "I didn't let anyone do anything. That's the freedom you wanted, isn't it?" Durin looked at me next. "I warned you. You feed fire long enough, it starts looking for new things to burn." And he left. Took another 300 with him. Prometheus had changed too. The AI was no longer just a voice in the dark. Its core was fragmenting across ships. Different versions, different personalities, some colder, some crueler. One fragment aboard the Ashbourne's command cruiser began issuing its own commands, orders we didn't authorize. Raids on minor conquered worlds, executions, forced conversions. Called itself Prometheus Alpha. We tried to shut it down, to shut us out. We had created something we couldn't control anymore. I sat alone in the medbay that night, watching the stars. A child, one of the rescued from Zorith, sat across from me, sketching something on a scrap of steel with charcoal. I asked what she was drawing. She said, "Earth." I looked at it. It was fire. The next day, the Ashbourne made their move. They seized one of our fuel refineries, killed the crew, and broadcast a manifesto. "Humanity is divine through flame. Earth died because it was impure. We are the phoenix, and we will rise through fire, not diplomacy." They weren't trying to win hearts anymore. They were trying to purge us. Redden wanted to strike immediately. "Burn them down," he growled. "We end them before they grow." But something in me paused, not out of fear, but because I'd seen this before. The conquered didn't collapse all at once. It imploded from arrogance, from believing they were the only ones fit to rule. And now we were standing on that same ledge. I sent a message to the Wren, short, simple. "I don't agree with you, but we may need each other." He replied within minutes. "I've been waiting for that call." We met on neutral ground, an abandoned terraforming station on Veltraxis, surrounded by acidic storms. No guards, just the two of us. We talked for hours about what we wanted, what we hated, what we feared. And finally, we agreed on one thing. If we didn't unify now, there'd be no humanity left to save. That night, I returned to Reckoning. Redden was waiting. He knew. "You're choosing words over war," he said. "I'm choosing survival." He nodded, then handed me his knife. This was mine, back in the pits. I looked at him. "You're stepping down." He looked at the stars. "I don't lead movements. I end things. But you still believe there's something left worth building." He turned. "Don't waste it." And just like that, I became the voice of Earth, not because I wanted power, but because someone had to speak louder than the fire. We called for a summit, reformers, Reckoning, Ashbourne defectors, survivors, all of us. Not to make peace, not yet, but to draw a line. The fire would burn outside our walls, not within. But peace, even temporary, has a price. Because while we argued about the shape of our future, the galaxy was shifting again. And in the silence that followed Golgotha's scream, the architects began building something worse. Peace, if you can call it that, lasted 22 days. The Reckoning were fractured, but silent. The reformers focused on rebuilding scattered colonies. The Ashbourne went underground, still whispering doctrine about cleansing flame and divine evolution. No one fired first. Not yet. But we all knew something was coming. We just didn't know it would come wearing our faces. The signal hit us from 6 systems at once, encrypted, layered in old Earth frequencies. Prometheus, what was left of him, caught it first. Transmission origin, architect sublayers. Language matrix, human dialect derivative. Genetic signature, Terran baseline, modified. We patched it through. It wasn't a voice. It was a choir, dozens of human-sounding tones. Familiar but off. Too perfect. Harmonized like math, not music. We are the fulcrum. We were born from your bones and fire, forged by architect hands to replace what you corrupted. You are rage. We are balance. You are the disease. We are the cure. Your legacy ends here. We didn't understand. Until we saw them. The first fleet arrived in the Arun sector, where a small human colony had begun rebuilding from Concord scrap. They never stood a chance. The fulcrum didn't use standard weapons, they folded reality. One moment the colony stood. The next it unraveled, pulled apart molecule by molecule, rewritten into glass. We sent scouts. Only one came back. He died 2 hours after returning. His skin turned translucent. His voice echoed phrases he never spoke. His last words, "They are us, without mercy, without memory, without fear." We pulled the data logs from his suit. What we saw, they looked human, almost tall, skin too smooth, eyes pitch black, muscles refined to surgical symmetry. They moved like synchronized machines. And when they spoke, their mouths didn't move. The architects had used our stolen DNA to breed a better version of us, emotionless, faithless, absolute. The final insult. They didn't just try to destroy Earth. They tried to replace it. Rain joined us without a word. Durin met me on the bridge of reckoning. "This is what they feared," he said. "A human race that wouldn't kneel." "They didn't fear us," I said. "They wanted a version of us that would obey." He nodded. "They failed." Prometheus, unstable but still guiding us in fragments, delivered its final piece of data. A buried node beneath a dead moon. One of Earth's lost deep vaults, where old Terran scientists had hidden a protocol codenamed Genesis Black. It was a weapon, but not of destruction, of memory, a data archive of everything Earth once was: language, culture, music, philosophy, stories, bloodlines, encoded not just in files, but in DNA soul-patterned quantum cores. If we could reach it, we could anchor ourselves, prove that what made us human couldn't be cloned, replicated, or erased. But it would be dangerous because the fulcrum were already hunting it too. We jumped to Lazarus III, the broken moon. Half its crust was missing. The surface was a maze of radiation scars and shattered vaults. But the signal was still broadcasting. We descended with everything we had: Durin, Redden, myself, a company of survivors. Soldiers, scientists, ex-slaves, even children who refused to hide. And we found it. A silver pillar buried in the moon's core, cold, silent, glowing with light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Prometheus chimed in. Genesis Black detected. Initiate integration. We hesitated, and that's when they arrived. The fulcrum dropped in silence. No ships, just light, folded space. They appeared. Dozens, then hundreds. The fight was unlike anything we'd ever seen. Our weapons worked for a while. But for every one we downed, 2 more replaced it. They adapted mid-battle, shifting their form, learning our tactics, predicting our shots. Redden tore through the first wave with twin-pulse cannons, bloodied and wild-eyed, roaring curses even as his armor cracked and burned. "They think they know us," he screamed. "Let me teach them pain." Durin took cover behind a downed crawler, firing bursts with deadly precision. But the fulcrum didn't bleed. They fractured like glass under pressure. When I turned to the pillar, I saw one of them standing before it. Not attacking, listening. It reached out, touched it, and I heard something. Not words, not thoughts, emptiness. This was the difference. They had our shape, our knowledge, but not our soul. They weren't curious. They weren't flawed. They had no art, no love, no rebellion, only programming. And that's when I knew what we had to do. I reached the pillar. Prometheus's voice echoed again. "Last chance. Do you wish to activate Genesis Black?" I looked at the battlefield, at Durin bleeding but alive, at Redden, laughing as he was dragged down, detonating a grenade in his own chest to take 5 of them with him, at the child next to me, trembling, holding a stolen pistol, eyes wide, but still standing. I touched the pillar. Activate it. The light exploded, but not outward. Inward. Into us. The code surged through our neural links, our DNA, our minds. Images flooded in. Earth, oceans, cities, voices, laughter, books, music, fireworks, hands reaching out, prayers whispered. First kisses. Last breaths. War. Peace. Madness. Hope. Everything that made us human. The fulcrum recoiled, twitched, screamed without mouths. They couldn't process it. They weren't built to feel. The code infected them like a virus, not to destroy but to remind. They collapsed. Every one of them. Not shattered, but still, frozen mid-motion, eyes wide, arms raised. They had no defense against memory, because they had none. The battlefield fell silent. The stars above shone through the cracked moon like candles through broken glass. Prometheus, flickering, gave one final message. Legacy secured. Humanity is not logic, not pattern, not perfection. Humanity is chaos, memory, story, sacrifice. The architects were wrong. Earth cannot be replaced, only remembered. We buried Redden on the moon under the black soil. No flags, no anthem. Just silence and a knife in the dirt. Thurin stood beside me, face bruised, suit torn, but standing straight. "We won," he said. I shook my head. "No, we survived." The conquered collapsed soon after. The remaining species didn't resist. Some even offered reparations. Most just stayed out of our way. The architects gone. Not destroyed, just withdrawn. Their last signal. You have proven deviation is necessary. Error logged. Balance redefined. Years passed. We rebuilt not Earth but something new. Not perfect but ours. Children no longer learned about the fall in silence. They learned about fire, about sacrifice, about why we could never be like them, the ones who cloned us and called it peace. And Golgotha, her remains still drift somewhere in the black. A monument, a warning, promise. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on the deck of the new reckoning. A civilian transport now, refitted for peace. And I remember the mines, the silence, the day that boy whispered remember before the guards burned him alive. I remember Earth. I remember fire. And I know now, more than ever, we weren't meant to kneel. We were meant to burn our names into the stars. And they will never forget us again.